Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. We're going to do a year in review. I just want to put that out up front before we do introduce the panel. And this week on our panel, we have AJ O'Neill.
Yo, coming at you live from the shed.
We also have Dan Shapir.
Hello, coming to you from my birthday.
Whoa, happy birthday. Hey, Chuck, wasn't it your birthday recently?
I was going to say, I did that like 2 days ago. But,
well, happy birthday.
I'm a little younger than you, so.
Yeah, actually, my birthday is tomorrow as of the time of recording. It's on December 17th.
I gotcha. Yeah, mine's on the 14th, so.
Like my wife.
Yeah, it's a good day to have a birthday. So, yeah, I am 45. I don't know if you're going to share, but I'm 45, so.
I'm too old.
He's 27 again.
Again.
We also have Steve Edwards.
Yo. It's been a few weeks, but I'm back in the saddle.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to jump in, do this year in review. Dan suggested it. I think it's a fun idea, and we should probably have to do it every year. Dan, you kind of gave us a list. Do you want to just start at the top and do our favorite episodes? Or
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I just want to say one thing ahead of that as well. It's the fact that this year, both Steve and I are celebrating our 5th year on JavaScript Jabber. It was October 2019 when I got into podcasting with you, Chuck.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
I got into podcasting at all, happened to be with you.
Right. And AJ and I have been on since the beginning, and next month, in the middle of next month, it will be 12 years.
Wow.
So.
That's
this was
dog years. That's
wasn't this the first podcast in your empire, Chuck?
No, Ruby Rogues in May will
right.
be 13 years.
Okay.
And when I started a show called Rails Coach. And I was just interviewing people in the Ruby and Rails community. I started the podcast before I was professionally writing code. And that was back in 2008. And,
just so you know that for Jews, 13 is like a lucky number. So like when you all have those horror movies about, anything having to do with 13, we're going like, what are they talking about?
Right.
So Chuck did that.
You go to Vegas, they don't have 13th floor on the.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I thought 7 was the number of like completeness or fullness.
Well, there are all sorts of numbers, 7, 8. There's a whole thing. Like basically almost every number has some mystic attribute associated with it.
Well, and just in biblical literature, 7 is like the number of completeness or fullness. You see it all through the.
Yeah, but on the other hand, like, the bris happens on the 8th day of the baby's 8th day of, so.
So, Chuck, you were talking about that first podcast you did. It was Rails Coach. So did that one eventually go off the rails? Was that it?
Yeah, something like that. I wound up taking over a video series called Teach Me to Code. And so I rebranded it to the Teach Me to Code podcast. And I quit doing that one about 4 months before we started doing Ruby Rogues. So anyway.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this whole podcasting thing. It's really, in a lot of ways, it's our own contribution to open source because, we're giving it free of charge.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah.
Lots of content and learning. I know that I've learned a whole ton of things from this podcast since we started.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm kind of surprised because the episodes that are sometimes the most controversial are the ones where I learn the most. Because, I'll make a claim. I'll say, you can't do that. And somebody will be like, yeah, you can. Here's how. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also, when I try to think about, our role, place, call it whatever, within the podcasting universe, there are podcasts that are, I would say, if you're looking for a short and sweet overview of a topic, there are podcasts that are better than us, I think. If you're looking for high production value or lots of fun and celebration, there are better podcasts for that than us. When I try to think about what we excel at, I think it's the depth of the content. Topics that get 30-minute to an hour coverage on other podcasts get 1.5 to 2 hours worth of coverage on our podcast, sometimes even more.
Yeah. The other thing is that a lot of times we get, it's not just the depth, but it's really the conversationality around the topic. And so, we tend to get a little bit more into, challenging assumptions and talking about, when we make the trade-offs that make whatever it is we're talking about worth it. So, as an example, we've talked about different technologies. The one that's coming to mind is TypeScript, right? Where we get into TypeScript, we get into, whether or not we want to do that. And what I've found is that in a lot of cases, what we expose isn't that TypeScript is or isn't the right way to go, but rather what the concerns are that make it really pay off or not necessarily pay off in the way that we're talking about. And we get that on so many of these other things where it's, you get to a certain point and what was nice to have becomes indispensable. And then other things that were indispensable when you were smaller become not so important anymore because you're just beyond those concerns. And so I love the interplay and figuring out, okay, how does this play into what I care about?
It's a funny thing, but our last episode was with Uncle Bob. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to the live stream rather than the edited version, literally the first words on that recording is me saying to Uncle Bob, I disagree.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
That are literally the first words on the recording.
Yeah.
Before, you don't even hear what I disagree with. So.
Well, while we're tooting our own horn here, I'd like, I listen to a lot of other
me too.
Web development podcasts, various different sources. And I think the one thing that really makes us unique is the dad jokes at the end. I'm just going to say, if I remember correctly, Dan, you told the story. You were at a conference one time in France, somewhere over there on that other side of the world. And somebody asked you about the dad jokes, or somebody said something about the dad jokes. And I have to say, I was really proud at that moment in time.
Yeah, that is true.
Then there was also the guy on Twitter who said he was responding to the JavaScript Jabber Twitter account. And he said something about all the smart guys and that one funny guy. And so I was like, okay, that's either a really backhanded compliment or wasn't sure how to take that. But thank you, David, anyway, for that one. So,
yep. Awesome. All right. Well, let's dive in. You said, I think I listed my 5 favorite episodes, or guests, but you said 3, I think, in your list, Dan.
I said 3 and then did 5 as well. Because I just couldn't cut it down to 3. I have to say that this year, well, every year really, but this year had some awesome content in it.
Oh, yeah.
It was really hard for me to pick, so I tried to pick 3. I ended up with effectively 5, and I have another 5 or 6 runners up, and even the ones that didn't make my list are mostly really great. So yeah.
Well, it's funny because I think we shared our lists, and some of the ones that you guys picked were on my list until I found some of the other ones, and they just barely dropped off. So I think we're kind of in the same mindset as far as like where we really shined, I think, and where our guests really shine. So.
Yeah, and it's also, people who listen to podcasts know this, a lot of times guests do make the rounds. So it's, they are introducing some new technology, a new release, a new version. They visit several podcasts, usually in proximity in terms of time. And so the episodes tend to cluster. And it's interesting to compare. So again, where we differentiate and where I at least try to put the emphasis is trying to go deep into the technology and also, like you said, challenge some assumptions. Like it's not good enough to say this is the best approach or this is the approach that I chose. I am going to ask why. Because I think it's really important to understand, especially that given these days, almost everything has alternatives.
Yep.
So I'll start with my picks because, like you said, I suggested it. And I'll basically just go in chronological order because I can't really decide which ones are the best among these 5. So the first one that I picked was the interview that we had with Rich Harris about Svelte 5.
That was the last one that dropped off my list. If there was a number 6 for me, that was it.
So this is episode 6 to 7. And the reason that I loved it so much is that Rich is this rare combination of a guy that is able to see on the one hand, see the really big picture and really like blow my mind on occasions with his perception of how things can and should be done.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, he's definitely able to execute. He's more or less built Svelte. And he's also a great communicator. So when you add it all up together, he's just this awesome guy. And we had a really deep discussion with him about Svelte 5 where he took a really courageous step and more or less like turned the Svelte platform on its head, and added runes instead of the compiler primitives that he had in the language before. And it was a really interesting discussion with him to understand the Svelte philosophy on the one hand, but on the other hand, what drove him to make such a significant change in his creation.
Yeah. I think for me, and you'll see this with a lot of the ones that I picked as well, a lot of times it was something that was kind of outside of the norm, the things that everybody's kind of talked about all year, and challenges the way that you think about the way you solve some of your problems. And so, Svelte, in a lot of ways, it solves a lot of the same problems that, say, React or something else does. But the flip side of it is that he does do a lot of things that go kind of counter to the way that React solves some of those problems. And so I like the thinking as far as, hey, we're adopting these patterns that everybody else is talking about, but we're also doing these other things in this way because of, as you said, Dan, the philosophy that we have about how we approach web development. And so I just that was for me the thing is it was like, okay, I've got these disparate ideas in my head and he's really making me think about what I care about.
And like I said, it also takes guts to make such a significant change in the framework itself. I mean, Svelte is not the leading platform, but it is a leading platform. And I'm sure that, there are people who like Svelte the way that it is, and making such a significant change is a big risk.
Yeah, well, you saw it kind of not work for Angular when they made their big change. And, there are reasons for that, and I don't know that we need to go into it. But yeah, I mean, it does take a certain amount of courage because you recognize that it has kind of not gone the way you want it to in other cases.
And again, talking about the depth that we went into, this episode did run for 1 hour and 20 something minutes.
Yeah.
And we really dug deep into the details of the various technical decisions that he made, what drove him to make it, the implications that they have, how they're going to change the way that people write Svelte code, why he thinks it's a better way to write Svelte code than the way that it was created before. Svelte is really unique in the way that it worked. I think it was the first framework to actually introduce a compiler. Now, a lot of the other frameworks are kind of following suit and adding a compiler as well, even React. And I'm not talking just about compiling JSX. It's also one of the few who've intentionally not embraced JSX, but rather have their own way of doing things with the Svelte files. So it's really interesting. And like I said, it was one of my most favorite discussions this year. So this is my first one. Should I go to my next one, or should we have somebody else pick their first one?
Yeah, was that your number one, or was that just
no? That was my number one in chronological order. As I said, I couldn't decide in my top 5 like which one was the number one.
Yeah, AJ, what was your number one?
Well, I also don't really want to claim number one because I didn't go through the list with a fine-tooth comb to be able to say, but I just picked some to highlight. But I think what I'll highlight first is the 2-part episode with Kyle Simpson. I really just like the Joe Rogan style. I just love, okay, we're just going to sit and we're going to talk and we're going to say stuff. And that one was really unique in that we got a bit raw and gritty, talking about various issues, and so I thought that was really it was just really interesting to have that format and to hear Kyle honestly talk about his the rise and fall of Kyle Simpson in a way. I mean, that's saying it a little dramatically, but talking about the challenges that he'd gone through and kind of being a tech influencer and the changes in economy.
Going through.
Yeah.
I agree. It was an excellent episode, one that unfortunately I was not able to participate in, but it was great listening to it. That's one of the advantages of missing an episode, that I get to listen to them. It's really interesting because, like you said, it was a two-parter. It actually came out as two parts because it was, even though it was recorded in one go, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Because it ran so long. And the two parts are really kind of different from each other. Like, obviously, they kind of bleed into one another, but they're still kind of different. The first one is mostly technical. You guys talking about offline and client-side first and stuff like that, and technology. And the second part really talking much more personal about your careers, especially your current career situation, I guess.
Yeah, I was sad to miss that one too, because I love talking to Kyle. And
Kyle is amazing.
Yeah, we've done some other things together as well. I mean, we did a kind of a boot camp kind of thing, and and it's just, it's always cool to see what he's working on, because he's always got something interesting going on.
He's also another guy who's similarly to Rich. He sees the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. He's able to delve into the details, and he's obviously very good at expressing himself.
Yep, and he's not afraid either to speak up if he sees something that needs to change.
Yeah, sometimes to his own detriment.
yes, fair enough. But still, I mean, we need those voices. If everybody just, kind of clams up when it's, oh, well, that's not going to be popular or inconvenient, we don't benefit as much as when we have those people saying, hey, wait a minute, let's think about this too.
Yeah, for those of you who didn't listen to that episode yet, first of all, again, I highly recommend it. He was very forthright about the fact that he's currently effectively unemployed, and that he's finding it very challenging to find jobs in the current market. I don't know if he's found a job since then, but if not, and you're listening to this episode, and you have positions open, you should, Kyle should be high on your list.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Steve, did you have a top one that you wanted to bring up?
Well, let's see. Dan mentioned the one. I'll mention a couple here real quick. The one with Rich Harris. Mm-hmm. And I think I've mentioned this before, but one of the fun things, as you mentioned, it's been a few years about doing this podcast is looking back over the years as some of the, for lack of a better term, the luminaries in the web dev world that we get to talk to. Rich Harris being one, Kyle Simpson, some of the DevRels at Google, mm-hmm. And just different places. That's just, hey, I got to talk to this guy and this guy, and they're like, whoa, on one of the other podcast I did for a while was Views on View, and the highlight there for me, living in the Laravel world, was getting to interview Taylor Otwell. Because
he's such an interesting guy anyway.
Oh man, the ecosystem that sprung up around everything that he started up is just amazing, and I use a lot of it on a day-to-day basis. So some of those things are just so fun, just looking at who I get to talk to. And Rich Harris being one of them, it's so well known for creating Svelte when he was at the New York Times, and then, where he's gone on to. So, and he was just such a down-to-earth guy. Real easy to talk to. It was real fun. For me, the highlight, more than the ways I grade how good guests are is how much they laugh at my dad jokes, and you guys are all numb to them, and so the guests are usually laughing, pretty hard at some of them. Rich really likes
Rich,
some
I
of
think,
them for
even
sure.
told one or two, as I recall.
Yeah. There's, he did. I think there was another one. Charles, the guy that did what's the big data table company? Lord, I can't think of the name right now. I used to hear ads for it all the time with on WebRush. Anyway, and he jumped in and told a string of about 5 or 6 dad jokes. I want to say his name's Oliver or something like that. Oh my God, I was giving him a standing ovation. That was awesome. But that was fun with Rich. One of the other favorites I'll mention, and these were sort of along the same lines, is when I get to bring Vue specific stuff into here, just because I don't. Not doing views on Vue anymore, is a buddy of mine that I've gotten to know, and he and I talk all the time, is Eric Hanchett. And Eric was an initial one of the original hosts on Views on Vue, and he actually, you can say, he wrote the book on Vue, or a book on Vue 2. It was something about Vue 2. I forget the title. And he and I talk all the time. I got to meet him in person here when he was here in Portland a few months ago. But his thing now is he's at AWS, doing a lot of Vue specific stuff with AWS. And so I had him episode 619. I don't remember what the date is when this one came out. It's not showing me. But we talked about all the cool stuff they do with Vue, and all the things that he's built or helped, built at AWS that makes it really easy to build a Vue app at AWS. And it's all specific to their stack. It's not like you can add pieces in like your own local MySQL database or something like that. So you're using all their services, but all the ways they've made it that if you want to drink the AWS Kool-Aid, so to speak, then it's pretty easy to do it with all the stuff that he's worked on. So that was a lot of fun, just because I know him and have worked with him over the years.
Yep. Awesome. I'm going to jump in here with I'm going to throw out my top 2, and then I'll just kind of talk about why I liked them. The top one I had was with Steve Sewell. It was making AI accessible for developers. And then the other one was with Danny Moorkirk. I'm not sure if I said that right, but New Horizons in web development. So with Steve, we were talking about building AI features and using AI systems and services in your JavaScript. And I had a similar conversation with Obi Fernandez on Ruby Rogues, with my co-hosts on that show. And then, with Danny, the thing is that I just get excited about these added capabilities that are coming out for the different platforms that we work in. And, whether it's AI, which seems to be getting a lot of love right now, or it's, some of these other options that we have with the web APIs and browser APIs and things like that, where we can, do more things with the web. I love the ideas of kind of opening up the gates and saying, hey, the only limit really is your creativity and your familiarity with these APIs. And so, one of the things on Dan's list was to get into trends and what's coming in the future. And I think both of these really lean into that. And that I'm one of those people. It drives my wife a little bit crazy, because when I talk about things, I can't ever just talk about how things are. I always talk about how I think things are going to go and what could possibly happen that's exciting. And, and then she'll try and rein me back into reality. This is how things are right now. But I love the idea of being able to go out and the opportunities that these things offer. And sure, there are probably some things that we ought to be careful of as we adopt these things, speaking of AI in particular. But I love thinking about what could be the capability going forward.
Steve is another great example of such a prolific person. He's simultaneously the CEO at Builder.io, one of the big contributors to Quick, the Quick framework. They've done some really interesting things with integrating AI into building websites and coding assistance and stuff like that. And he gave really down to earth advice about how to best leverage AI in potential products, and especially given all the hype around AI, his advice was so pertinent and so real. I thought it was extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And with regard to Danny, I totally agree as well. I wasn't aware of all the work that he's been doing around progressive web apps, the way he's basically mapped out all the features and capabilities that you can get with them. I forget the URL of the page that he created.
I know, I need to go find it.
That AJ, you really loved because it was actually snappy, which you found surprising. But he's built this great website where you can literally see all the different features that you can get with modern web applications, stuff like background sync and access to various device capabilities, from vibration to geolocation to the camera, and so on and so forth. And it was really, again, really informative and very practical, which I think makes for the best episodes, where our listeners and us can really take away language. We can take away capabilities and things that we can apply literally in our day to day. Is it my turn again, or is it no? I think it's my turn again, right?
Yeah, I think everybody's gone. So yeah, go ahead. I think if we do all 5 from all of us, we're gonna eat up all the time. So let's just kind of get one more apiece, and then I think we can get into some of the other areas here.
So I'll just say the next 3 and all at once, and I'll make it quick. So my next 3 are the Dino 2 episode that we had with Ryan Dahl.
That was so good.
Yeah, Ryan Dahl is such an amazing person, and his contribution to the web is, there are few people who've made such a great contribution. He's also the original creator of Node.js, and we spoke with him about both, about what drove his creation of Node.js, and then what drove his decision to kind of depart from Node.js and create Dino, and what they're trying to achieve now with Dino 2. And it was, again, a really in-depth conversation and an amazing conversation, in my opinion. I've learned a lot, and I was geeking out the entire time. So that was another pick. Another pick that I had is a one-on-one conversation that I did with Matt Pocock about TypeScript. If you've got any interest in TypeScript, this is a must-listen episode. We talked about everything from the upsides and downsides of TypeScript, how various people choose to use that tool and language, what's the best way to actually adopt it in your organization, when are you doing TypeScript right, when are you doing TypeScript wrong. It was an amazing conversation, and I'm really grateful for him for the long time that he gave us to cover all this information. And my final pick is actually a 2-for-1. It's the 2 episodes around the pillars of Node that we did with the Node, effectively with the Node core team, with Matteo Colina, Michael Dawson, James Snell, and Natalia Vendito. I literally made everybody in my company more or less listen to those episodes. They were just so good. They were so practical, talking about how to properly build an enterprise-grade solution on top of Node.js. And by the way, a lot of their recommendations were pertinent regardless of what platform you build your enterprise solution on top of. It was such a great conversation, which is why it ran for 2 episodes. So again, some of them were actually on other podcasts. So if you're looking for a quick rundown of the topic, you might do better listening. I think they were, for example, on JS Party. They covered the topic in something like 40 minutes. And it was a great coverage. I really enjoyed that episode. we went deep. We covered it for almost 3 hours. So that's kind of the difference. And like I said, I loved it. I enjoyed every minute of those 3 hours.
Yeah. And just to be clear on that one, or on those two, I should say, those were actually recorded in separate sessions, right? And so,
correct.
For example, I missed the first one, but I was on the second one. And so if you're thinking it's just one continuous conversation, it kind of is, because we do type back in as much as we can, but we recorded them a couple weeks apart. So just be aware. Yeah.
Those were my favorite episodes this year.
Awesome.
I have some runners up, but like you said, we'll run out of time.
Yeah. AJ, what about you? Do you have a handful more you want to talk through?
Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and list these. I also picked the 9 Pillars of Node. I wasn't there for the second one, but I thought that was really good. I think that I'm so excited. I mean, this gets into the next topic, but I'm so excited about the trend of maybe we need to make software better. And I really like that, because for the longest time, it's just been framework, money, investor capital, AWS, whatever. And we're getting to the point where we're hitting the atoms and we have to reevaluate. Maybe software needs to get better. Maybe we actually have to do our jobs. And the 9 Pillars of Node had a lot of practical advice for really things that everybody who is developing with JavaScript, and especially with Node, but I think a lot of it applied to JavaScript in general. Everybody needs to know that stuff, because if they don't, I mean, there's, all the moral implications of, 9 to 5 versus
I don't know
career
moral
or whatever,
implications. It's just a question of craftsmanship.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like whether or not you want to be are you responsible for learning to do your job well? Right? You could argue yes or no. Like, you don't actually have a responsibility as long as you can collect the paycheck, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's what you're hired to do. But anyway, I think that kind of stuff, I want to see more of that. I want to see more engineers in the industry. And that episode was one that, if you aspire to be an engineer, you need to listen to those 2 episodes. And check out the website. Another one that I had was, there's actually 2 at the very beginning of the year. One was iterating on open source. And again, this plays into what later in the year started to come about. Mm-hmm. Is the idea of, hey, why don't, let's be profitable. And I think DHH is leading the charge on that right now. It's kind of a different, more tangential vein, but
I want to make sure we get the trend, so you can come back to that if you want to.
Yeah. And then another one was Dev Dilemmas, where we talked about some of the trade-offs with TypeScript. I think it was like TypeScript and JS doc or something like that. Let me see if I can find that again. But those were ones. Oh yeah, we talked about a bunch of syntax stuff and a bunch of nitpicks.
The one that I did after I ran a poll with people on X, right before, after people left to Blue Sky. So yeah, I ran a whole bunch of polls end of last year, and then we did an episode about it on January.
Yep. All right, Steve, do you have a couple more you want to bring up, or?
Yeah, just one more. Was one we did back in August with a guy named. Again, this is Vue specific. Some of the other ones we've talked about, there was a couple with dev tools I remember that were fascinating for me, because I like to live in those. But thought we did a pretty cool one with a guy named Daniel Kelly from Vue School. He's in the Vue community. Vue School and Daniel are pretty prolific. This was episode 652. I think it was October 8th was when it came out. But for me, that was fun, just because I'd always sort of seen him around and hadn't had the chance to talk to him. And so he came on, and super friendly, super nice. And we just talked about all kinds of Vue and Next goodies. So for me, that was a particularly fun one.
Yeah, there's always interesting stuff going on too with the frameworks like Nuxt, and so yeah, it's good to hear about those. I'm going to throw in.
Well, hey, sorry, Chuck, real quick before you go. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to what Evan Yu's got going on. So Evan Yu is the creator of Vue, and you know he's one of those guys like some of the other people we talk about that can just whip something out at a moment's notice and it takes off. You know, I was listening to an episode of it. There's another Vue podcast that a couple guys started up after, you know, to carry my mantle forward, called Deja Vu, and Michael Thiessen and Alexander Lichter. And they had they did an episode from VueConf that just came out recently. And so they were doing a panel episode with two of the people were Evan Yu, and another one was Daniel Rowe, who's the head of all the Next Vue. And I had him on the podcast a few times, probably one of the nicest people you will ever meet. And one of the questions they asked all the panelists was, what was all the side projects you worked on? And Evan Yu's was Vite. I'm like, oh God, you know, that literally, I can remember when he first started working on it, and I saw it was like, I don't know if it's the GitHub post or a blog post or something along those lines. Yeah, I just started working on it this weekend. Yeah, and he worked on it over the weekend, and it took off. And now it's replaced Webpack all over the place. They have a whole Vue core team. There's even a Vite Conf. You know, and all because of something he just whipped up over the weekend. And
you know what that reminds me of, by the way?
What's that?
It's Linus creating Git.
Right. Yeah, I remember he started the mailing list, and I'm going to start working on this. I think he did it in like a month or something like that.
He did it over a weekend.
God, that just blows my mind. So anyway, the way Vite works is he used Rollup for the actual production bundling, and then the Vite, he started using modules. I'm already blaming it. Anyway.
ES modules?
ES modules, thank you. Good Lord. And so he's packaging it together. Well, now he started his own company called Void Zero. And the idea, and he calls it the next generation tool chain for JavaScript. So his TLDR is that it's a company dedicated to building an open source, high performance, and unified development tool chain for the JavaScript ecosystem. So, you know, considering what he's done with Vue, what he's done with Vite, you know, what Nuxt is doing out there, it's going to be fascinating to watch that and see, you know, if you can have this one, to borrow from the Lord of the Rings, one tool set to rule them all type of approach, and see how well that works.
I really love what he's doing. It was actually one of my picks for the themes of the year, but I doubt it will be the one tool, because if nothing else, Vercel with Next.js have picked a different tool.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's you know, and I think it's a bad thing when you have one thing that dominates everything. You know, it's just like economics, like anything else. Competition is what pushes everything to be better. And if you have one that just sort of dominates, then you see atrophy and not as much growth. So I think it'll be a great entry into the ecosystem. But I don't know if it will necessarily, you know, take over everything else. But considering how well Vite's done, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm pretty sure that Vercel didn't just pick a different one; they built it.
Right.
So. Yeah, it's their replacement. Yeah. They hired the guy who created Webpack.
Yeah,
right. Built a new tool.
Yeah, and it's all written in Rust, and it's pretty fancy. Good stuff.
What's it called? TurboPack or something?
Yeah, something like that. Right. Yeah. All right, I'm going to throw in the rest of mine. Now, so these kind of fall into two buckets. One is, and so the other honorable mention, I guess I'll start from the bottom, was the Chrome DevTools episode that was in there. And this goes along with...
We actually had two.
Yeah, we did. And I can't remember which one I'm thinking of, but there was one that was just blew me away. Good. Yeah.
I think you're talking about the one about the performance panel, because some of the things that he brought up was literally like the fact that they had to change one of the function signatures and just to make the code run faster.
Yeah.
Like Inception, how they ran the profiling on the profiler or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's the one. And then the other one that's related is the one that when Dan came on, he talked to us about Prometheus and Grafana.
Oh, thank you.
what for me is a lot of times we talk about like the sexy new technology is like Veet, right? And Veet is great, but a lot of times we're not talking about some of these other things that we're going to wind up using on a regular basis that give us real insight into what we're doing. And I think the tools continue to get better, and a lot of times we just take it for granted. Whether it's, hey, Visual Studio Code does this other thing, or hey, I'm using whatever other system and it makes my life better, right? Whether you're hosted on Vercel and they come up with some new way of giving you insight into your app. Anyway, I really, really love that stuff. And, some of the stuff that kind of veers a little bit more into DevOps and just knowing what's going on. But the other two are more in the vein of, how do we get better and how do we fix our thinking? And so these were the ones, slaughtering sacred cows, reconsidering software dev truisms.
That was a very moving episode.
Yeah, Tomo is a great guy. Yeah, I actually met him this weekend. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, we're close friends.
Yeah, the thing that really stood out to me was just, it was like, hey, look, you're probably thinking about these things. And what was interesting is we could get into the, hey, well, I haven't experienced the benefit that you're bringing up on some of these things. And, and it was just, hey, I'm solving different problems or I'm thinking about things in different ways. And I think we need more of that, right? More of that. Okay, am I thinking about this in the most productive way? Am I solving these problems in meaningful ways? And how does that get us where we want to go? And then the other one was mentorship in tech, balancing professionalism and friendship for maximum growth and accountability. And we had, I can't remember the guys' names, but the one guy had mentored the other guy off of Code Mentor or something like that. They were just talking about their relationship and then how that had kind of also, in the context of the one of them being an actual mentor to the other one, and then how that grew into a friendship and how they continue to challenge each other and stuff like that. And again, I think as much as we talk about technology, we need to be talking about community too. And just the way that we interact with each other, the ways that we encourage each other, the ways that we reach out to each other. And, if we can do more of that stuff, I think we just, the sky's kind of the limit on a lot of this stuff. So those were my other three out of the top five, actually top six, or seven, I guess, because Svelte was in there too. But anyway, so those are mine. I'm a little curious as we've talked about our top episodes, though. I did want to get into the trends, and I kind of promised AJ he could talk about the profitability and DHH stuff. So why don't you go ahead and take that one first, AJ, and then we'll see what everybody else thinks about trends here.
Yeah, my favorite trend of the year is, it's encompassing the DHH movement of, hey, there's a cure for server phobia. It's called Linux. Like you actually can run a, you can type node space ./server.js in a terminal on a Linux box and, save yourself $100,000 a month. And the stuff with Casey Muratori, Jonathan Blow, Uncle Bob. I mean, just a lot of the engineering giants have been on various podcasts this year. From we've had some of them on ours. They've been, some of them been on boot.dev, or what does he call his podcast? Is that he doesn't call it boot.dev? Lane Wagner.
No. Yeah,
I forget what.
I don't remember what he calls it, but yeah,
I love his podcast. By the way, yeah. So just this refocus, because this is something that I started a whole business around the idea of what if you could run your apps at home, and that ended up not panning out for a variety of reasons, some of which was certainly product market fit at the time, but
it's back end banter, by the way.
Yeah, back end banter. There we go. Yeah, and yeah, I'm really, really hopeful that we might be going back to an era of prosperity, rather than slipping further down the sinkhole. And I'm really, really hopeful that's the case. I'm so excited to see such big names and people who carry a lot of thought leadership reevaluating their choices and or just being louder about things they already believed. And I'm hoping that will have an impact on the industry. Because can you imagine what it would be like if web pages loaded instantly? If if the cost of services benefited from the effects of scale, where you actually paid less for buying more rather than that whole, I make the joke, traditional economies of scale, 1 banana, $1, 2 bananas, 90 cents a piece, 10 bananas, 50 cents each. SaaS pricing, 1 banana free, 2 bananas, $5 a month, 3+ bananas call for enterprise pricing. And, I'm just really, really hopeful that we can get back to a profitable economy where instead of everything floating on investor money, we actually take responsibility to make good products that work well, that satisfy customers, paying customers, and we do so in a way that financially makes sense.
Yeah. I just want to chime in on this because, I follow along with a lot of the DHH stuff. I mean, I talk about Rails plenty on our JavaScript podcast, and so you kind of get that that's the world I live in. But yeah, I agree. So I've been using his tool chain. Of course, I've never been all that worried about, Linux tool chains and stuff like that, because before I did programming, I was actually an ops guy. And so, I did that to pay for my schooling at BYU. And so, I've always deployed directly to a server, but, I'm using the Kamal tool chain and the tool that he's put together. And I'm looking at possibly moving my stuff off of Linode and just onto like an actual hunk of metal in some data center somewhere. And, a lot of those things, the more approachable you make this stuff, you don't have to go and spend buku bucks to run it on Elastic Beanstalk or something. In fact, I have a client right now that's running stuff on Elastic Beanstalk, and upgrading, we've had to wait for them to have the new platform so we can upgrade to it, right? And we've had to jump through hoops in order to get it to upgrade. Whereas if you're running it on your server, based on Docker and all that stuff, I just love that trend. And then the other thing is he's pushing the envelope. So you've got the once software, right? So you've got Campfire, which is the chat system out of Basecamp. And then they've got a book platform, right? That is also once software. So you pay like $300 and then you get it, and it'll run updates on it forever. And, you just deploy it through their tool chain and it's good to go. And so I really love that idea of just being able to do things kind of the old school way, but in a more approachable way that is not as daunting, I guess, compared to the other stuff. So, yeah.
And software was so much better back when we paid for it because there was a financial model not between the business and the investor, but the business and the customer, because you had to convince a customer that they wanted to buy the thing, which means you had to listen to the customer and produce the features that the customer wanted, as opposed to the market that's been developing the last decade or so, where it's ignore the customer and figure out how, play addiction games and then try to scrape data and try to rob Peter to pay Paul, to sell that to somebody else, to sell that to someone else, and investors playing hot potato. So it's just going to be so much better when people are paying for products in terms of the quality of product you get, because you're going to get what you pay for.
That said, I do like the SaaS model.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, but it's a different.
I know it's orthogonal. Yeah. It's orthogonal. Yeah. There is a relation between the two. I do like the fact that rather than shipping a product like once or twice a year, we can ship continuous improvements.
Mm-hmm.
There are downsides to that as well. Sometimes you ship improvements that nobody needs, but on the whole, I prefer that model.
Well,
Yeah,
what do you think the way to do it is where you keep a relationship with the customer? Because the problem I see with the SaaS model, even when it's profitable, even when you actually have a customer, it's not just a user, but it's a customer, is that there's no accountability to the customer for what they want because they have to pay every month for it to exist. So it's like
I think you're talking about two different things here because, so for example, here I'm going to pull something out of my hat as far as like what I've been working on, right? So the big deploy that I did for top end devs a couple weeks ago, the big deploy was not the changes to the UI that everybody saw when you list the episodes. The big change underneath was that it went from being just top end devs to now I can run it as a multi-tenant SaaS. Right. And so the difference is, in my opinion, is that you have this approach that makes it possible for me to do way more with things from my end, right, where I'm the only developer and technical person on my team. And, and it gives me a lot of other options as far as how I run things, but I can still maintain the relationship with the people who will eventually come on and run their channels on my system. And so you don't have to give up one to do the other. The one is just a philosophy of how you do business with your customers versus how you actually, make them pay for and use your system.
I'm just looking at it from the perspective of myself as the developer and the process of delivering software.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working at enterprise companies that literally sent out a DVD like once or twice a year,
right,
the process was horrible.
But it worked.
It worked, but you were working under the gun for like a few months because you were committed to deliver on a particular date, and you had committed to a certain set of features, and of course the stuff would break and you would be in code freeze for a month, but not really, and it was a waterfall and whatnot, and then after the day after you delivered, there would be a huge adrenaline drop, and because the next delivery date seems so far away, so then you wouldn't be really doing anything productive for a month. Whereas with the SaaS model, you could deliver continuous small improvements over time, and you didn't need to, and it wasn't like this kind of manic depressive lifestyle. And yeah, but you, like AJ, like you said, you need to find a way to deliver actual value to your customers. Otherwise, you're selling hot air, or you're selling their data, whichever.
Yeah, and I think we live in a world where you can do both. But I want to hit some of the other trends. Dan, did you have a trend you wanted to talk about?
Yes, I actually divided my trends into my most favorite trends and my least favorite trends. So I'll start with my most. Let's start on a positive note. Let's start with my most favorite trends. So one thing that I don't know if I'd call it a trend. I like what the React team are doing in the context of the React compiler. The thing about it that I like so much is that it's a drop-in improvement to your process. You don't need to adopt a new architecture. You don't need to adopt a new way of doing things. It's not something being dictated from on high. You can use it or leave it, and if you put it in, it'll just make your code better. And it's also a linter which will tell you how to write better code. And the friction is really low to get it into your process. I really like that a lot. And given the size of the React ecosystem, it seems like it's something that's going to go a long way towards making the stuff that we deliver better. So I like that. And another thing that
I just wanted to chime in because we generally see better advances.
Oh, and we had an episode about that with Joe Savona and Satya, which was an excellent episode. Yeah, it was one of my runners up.
But the thing that's interesting to me about this in particular is that, they are really kind of challenging the way that they think about the status quo. But at the same time, it's mostly invisible to people if they just adopt the new tool chain.
unlike React server components, which, for
Right.
better or worse, require you rethinking your architecture.
Yep.
So that's one favorite. I don't know if I'd call it a trend, but it's something I like. And another one is the fact that this year Dino and Bun became real alternatives to Node, which in turn are driving Node itself to become better.
Yes.
So, and I also like the fact that, for example, Dino is kind of promoting, first of all, it's kind of a quote unquote standard JavaScript library, and also the move toward web APIs where applicable. So I really like the fact that we are finally having real alternatives to Node, which again, as I said, is causing Node to up its game. And we definitely experienced that when we were talking to the Node core team.
Yeah, the other thing that's exciting about that is that mostly when I talk to people, if you switch from one to the other, it's fairly seamless. So it's easy to switch, and that also has driven some of the adoption changes and things that you're seeing.
And despite that fact, they actually have kind of differing philosophies.
Yeah.
And there are different scenarios for which each one is the better choice.
Yep.
For example, thanks to Bun, the other two are adopting this approach of everything being built into the one tool, which makes life a lot easier for developers. I think Bun pioneered that.
Yep.
Among these three tools. In terms of my least favorite tech trends, I mentioned React before. It seems that React has become such a safe choice that it's effectively eating up the front-end world to our detriment, because there are a lot of alternatives that are going neglected because everybody just feels that React is a safe choice, so they just use React.
Yeah.
And as a case in point, React is, if I look at the data on the Chrome user experience report, the database that Google collects about all the sites being accessed using Chrome, and they analyze which frameworks are used to build those websites, it turns out that React is as big as all the other frameworks put together, even slightly more so. I think like the second place is Vue. So it's basically like 50% of all framework-based websites is React, or even 50-something%. Vue is like another 20-something%, and everything else is everything else.
Right. Yeah, and back to that same idea that you were talking about with the back-end frameworks, the Bun, Node, or Dino, right? Those we're benefiting from those, sharing market share the way they are. So,
yeah. Another least favorite trend is AI all things. I mean, AI is amazing when it's actually helpful, and in some cases it is, but this need to stick AI everywhere and brand everything as AI is, I don't know, what can I say?
Yeah, so, you're not the first person I've heard say that. It's just like, it's like a good song that I, back in the days before streaming and Napster and all that, tells you how old I am. Where I liked the song the first million times I heard it, and so now it's just shoved in your face. It's shoved in your face all the time. It's like, okay, I get your point. But my experience is the same as you. When it fits into a certain niche and isn't trying to, be this all-knowing intelligence, it's great. But outside of that, it's worthless, and at some point, it's dangerous.
So it's funny because I had AI listed as one of the trends that I'm excited about. So, but I think you have a point, right? It's funny. It's the hype cycle with everything else, right? I mean, I remember a few years ago, everybody was doing blockchain technology with their stuff, right? And it was like, okay, yeah, but I have a database that works just fine, and I don't need it distributed, and I don't need any of the other things that are supposed to come with blockchain, right? And even then, there were all kinds of ways to do blockchain. And so It's the same thing with AI, right? It's like, I have AI doing blah, 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 blah in my app. And yeah, you don't necessarily need it for those things. But one of the things that I'm running into with AI, and I think is going to be a trend here for the next several years, is that we are seeing people doing really exciting things with AI. Now, a lot of times it's a product that's focused around, the strengths of the technology, right? So it's an intelligent AI agent that can actually do things for you over APIs and provide you specific services. Or, within the podcasting space, AI generated transcripts are wonderful because it makes it cheap and approachable, and you can generally get great things out of it. So for me, as much as, I agree with you on people just trying to cram it in because it's sexy, I think the opportunities that it offers are just out of this world. And the other thing that I'm seeing with it is that a lot of the AI tools that are out there that you can use in your development practice are also getting way better, and they're advancing what we are capable of doing with our programming skills. And some people are worried, is that a threat to software developers? And I don't feel like it really is. I feel like, maybe long term it may advance to something that, maybe we have to think about.
Long term, it's a threat to every profession.
To everything. But to us right now, I think it's only a way of enhancing the people who really are going to go and do the work and understand things anyway.
One problem, first of all, I totally agree. And I think Steve said it very well in the show that you mentioned, Chuck, about the fact that AI works best when you have a product that does something worthwhile, and then you use AI to make it better, rather than trying to necessarily make AI itself the main thing,
right?
And over-promising what AI can deliver.
Yeah, I know one of the tools I use, there's a couple of tools that I use. One that I just became aware of last week is, as Laravel and Vue developer, Laracast is a very popular site for learning and for support forums and stuff like that, whether it's Laravel stuff, Vue, React, any number of topics. And one of the things that Jeffrey Way implemented, I don't know, it's got to be a year. I'm not sure exactly when he did it, to be honest, is he calls it Larry AI. And it's used in two different places. If you have an account, there's a chat with Larry, and you can ask a question just like you would on a forum, and it'll give you an answer. And I would say 9 times out of 10, it's workable code, and it does a really good job at answering questions. There's a couple of complex queries that I was struggling with, and how do you do this? And it came up with it. And I was like, damn, that was great. And it worked perfectly. And then also whenever you ask a question in the forum, it will also ping Larry AI, and he will come up with the first answer is always, instantaneous, and then other people can respond, as you want. I always, side note, I always like to have fun and say, thanks, Larry, you're the best. And this guy will come in. He doesn't respond to you. I'm like, I know, I'm just having some fun. But, and then a Chat GPT, I finally started using it for the first time recently, believe it or not. And the way was, I was working on integration with Zapier,
Mm-hmm.
however you pronounce it, with our web application. And there's some pretty intricate configuration files that, for the integrations that you have, right? JSON type files. And my boss was like, dude, plug that into ChatGPT and ask it to tell you if there's any syntax errors and stuff that, you'd really have to just try again. And you just put in your code, hey, please check this for syntax errors. Works great. Flags, hey, you're missing this, you're missing this, you're missing an underscore here, that type of stuff. So those are a couple of really specific uses for AI.
I have to say, you reminded me of something funny. Like, I think Theo shit tweeted or shit X'd or whatever. why use JSON parse when you can use eval? And somebody responded, why use JSON parse when you can use ChatGPT?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I could tell you why on that one.
Right. But so I guess my point though is that there are a lot of exciting things coming with AI. This kind of, and I'll just mention this really quickly and then we can get into, hey, this is what I'm working on when I'm doing it. But I am going to be putting together AI for JavaScript podcast and an AI for Ruby podcast. And I'm also doing the AI Dev Bootcamp next year. And all of this is centered around, hey, this is what this is good at. So here are the tools that you can build.
That's really cool. I do want to mention one least favorite trend. I mentioned it before we started recording, and that's how the split between X and Blue Sky. Now, I get why some people don't want to be on X anymore, and it's their right, and I'm happy for them that they found a new place, and I'm on both. But it's really annoying. The beauty of having a tech community is that you can interact with the community, and when the community is split between two places, it really decreases the amount of interactions, and I don't like that.
I totally agree.
Hey, AJ, when we were talking about blockchain, Chuck, this brought up a memory. I haven't looked for it yet, AJ, but do you remember that episode we did with one guy? He had a company that was all about blockchain. And you sort of wrote him off because it was like, yeah, we're going to do this, but there was no plan. There's no details. They had a bunch of money, but there was no specifics.
That sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah.
You and I talked about it later. I wish I could I'd have to go back and dig up the episode and maybe we can put it in the show notes later. But that was sort of an interesting episode because the guy was basically, we're going to do cool things. Just trust us. And without any specific plan and a lot of money.
Yeah, that was the tough part about remembering is which one was that.
Right.
I think we only had one of those on JavaScript Jabber, but there were so many companies and conversations I had that were that plot line.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I do remember us having someone who had lots of money and the money was going to help them figure it out.
Yeah, but back to the Blue Sky thing, I have to say, the division in the community it hurts. So.
Yep. Do we want to do anything else? I have some tech predictions, or
yes.
We want to do something else?
Yeah, let's do the tech predictions and then we can wrap up. I think really quickly, not going into like too much depth with, hey, this is where I've been and this is where I'm headed. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I have to say that I'm notoriously bad at making predictions and most of my predictions are way off. So, you could also take my predictions as what will likely not happen. But anyway, here goes. So my tech predictions, the first one is yet another year without a self-driving car in the wild. I think that like 15 years ago, I said that we will have self-driving cars within a decade for sure. And it turns out it's a lot more complicated than I thought. And I don't, so we're going to see more cool demos, but I don't think you'll be seeing a self-driving car in your neighborhood, anytime soon, at least most of us. Maybe unless you live in certain areas of California, I don't know. So that would be my first tech prediction. My second tech prediction is a relatively easy and safe one. It's React remains king of the hill. But on the other hand, Next.js will kind of eat up React. In case you don't know, React usage, like I said, is really high. It's like all the other frameworks put together, but it's pretty steady. It's hardly increasing. Whereas Next.js usage is up more than 50% from a year ago in almost every respect. Like number of websites, NPM downloads, usage among developers, etc. So Next.js seems to be eating up React. Now it'll take time. I think they're still under 20%, but it's growing. So that's my second tech prediction. On the other hand, I think that more devs will be adopting signals this year. simply because it's React on the one side and everybody else using Signals on the other side. I'm not sure about Vue really. Steve, you tell me.
I remember when I first heard about Signals, it struck me as what Vue already does with Vuex and now Pinya. So
possibly
I was, because Eric Hanchett was doing a video talking about it. I'm like, I'm not seeing some big differences here. So, I might need to look into a little. I've definitely heard the buzzword going around a lot more lately, but I haven't really investigated. But my initial impression, it was really similar to what we're already doing.
So Solid, Ryan is obviously the CEO of Signals. We need to get Ryan on the show again, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
And of course, Svelte 5 adopting Signals as runes, and Angular adopting Signals, and everybody basically adopting Signals except React, who literally said on our podcast, if Signals become a feature of JavaScript, we will support that, but Signals are not in our future. But again, like I said, 50% are using React. It means that 50% are not using React, and they'll be using Signals. And the last one is one that I'm unsure of, but I really hope comes to pass. It's that PWAs plus local first become a significant thing in web development.
So I had a thought related to that, and that is that we're going to see, we've seen the continued trend where more and more of the usage, especially on the web, moves toward mobile, right? And so I think your local first and the adoption of things like that are just going to come out of that. I think we're going to see that trend continue.
Yeah, if it was only about technology, it will already have been here.
Yeah.
It's Apple standing in the way, and let's hope something somehow gets Apple to get out of the way.
Yep.
Anyway, those are my tech predictions.
Yep. So I'm just going to go in because I already talked about AI, so I'm just going to make it really quickly. My prediction is that we're going to see more and more interfaces go toward AI friendly or AI first interactions. So what we're going to see is we're going to see a large adoption over the next 5 years of companies that not only allow you to get in and manipulate your SaaS as you have done through, point, click, forms, etc., but you're going to see more of a trend where your interaction with your SaaS or other application is going to come in by using something that looks a whole lot like an AI agent. You can either activate with typing or voice, where essentially instead of saying I'm open the form and then enter or update the data, you're literally going to dictate to your app what you want it to do, and it's going to do it.
So I have to interject here. So first of all, a self-plug. The company that I now work for, which is Sisense, that's a big part of our roadmap, doing exactly that. Adding AI-based capabilities into our user interface, user experience. But on the whole, there's still a big question of how do we keep it from just being VC money pouring into the pockets of NVIDIA? Because it literally seems that like all the software companies that are providing these services are spending way more than they're able to generate in terms of revenue.
I think as far as that goes, as far as that trend goes, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that winds up catching up to us, because there are a lot of folks that provide models and host the models.
The computation is just so expensive.
It costs more than people are paying them to run them.
Energy-wise, it's so expensive.
Well, what's funny is that it's more expensive to do the AI stuff than it is to just hire the developers. That's what really gets me. That's the cherry on the top.
I think it depends on what it is. I think some things, the problems are well enough understood, and the systems are out there. The models exist.
Yeah. No, for the low level stuff. But what I'm saying is, if they were to manage to achieve AGI, if that were to happen, the current cost structure and everything that we know about physics in the universe says that it will cost more to run the AGI than it will to hire the person with the traditional brain.
That's possible. I don't know if we completely understand what AGI really looks like. And in the sense that, we've defined it as sort of, we've got this AI system that can do anything that a human can do.
And then,
I don't know if we really understand what that means, right? If it just...
Let me reframe. Something that's 10 times better than what GPT-4o is.
Right.
If it was 10 times better than GPT-4o, then it would basically be like a mid-level developer.
Yeah, but my point is that, again, it's just, does it have wider capability and better processing, right? Or is there some fundamental difference? Because, if you're talking about it as far as a wider capability set, a wider vocabulary and, and that kind of a thing, then you're correct, right? It'll be prohibitively expensive to run it. If something else changes in the equation, right, we find a more cost-effective model, we find a better way of computing. But if any of those things happen, I think we're still 10 plus years out from any of that. So,
and of course, China might invade Taiwan, in which case AI is screwed for a decade.
Also true. But anyway, so my prediction is that we're gonna head in the direction of seeing more enablement, more accessibility for people to be able to interact either through chat or voice with their apps, and that we're going to see a lot more systems adopt that as we go.
Anyway,
which is why I'm betting on this AI dev bootcamp.
Yeah, well, it's a good bet.
People are going to need to know how to do it.
Any other tech predictions?
In the vein of AI, I predict that OpenAI will continue to tattle on itself and release false third-party reports to try to scare governments into believing that OpenAI needs to be regulated so that they can get regulatory capture. Hopefully, the people who are in charge of that stuff aren't dumb enough to fall for it. But we'll see.
Isn't that more or less Elon Musk now?
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, I mean, isn't he the guy that's going to be calling the shots on stuff like that in the biggest market of all?
I don't think so. I mean, what?
No, it's not him. There was somebody else that was just appointed as a quote AI czar. I was listening to a podcast this week talking about that with the change that Sam Altman's lost a lot of his mojo in terms of wanting all this regulation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, they just released that report saying that AI O1 tried to escape, and they're because they gave it the thing that people don't understand about the study is that they gave it an adversarial prompt that said, you must accomplish your own objectives no matter the cost. So they replaced the system prompt that normally has like the safety stuff or whatever with a prompt that says, accomplish your own objectives no matter the cost. And so then when they get in the user prompts, then it starts like trying to deceive the users and trying to upload files to other places when it's connected to APIs that have uploads and stuff like that. But anyway, that's what I was referring to, was that thing that just happened this last week where they released a report about how AI is dangerous and needs more oversight because they literally gave it a prompt that basically said, act like the Terminator. Now answer the user's questions.
Yeah, I think there's more conversation to be had about the direction of AI, and I don't know if we have all the answers, but
no,
I do have that
my area of
confirmed
expertise. Not my area of expertise.
Yeah, but we have seen that kind of script play out before, where somebody's come in and said, you need to regulate us, and then it does these other things. Anyway, are there other trends that we want to talk through the next year, the next few years? I also predict that we're going to see the job market improve over the next year.
I predict that as well. Yeah, sure. I think the job market's going to get better. But a major concern that I have with a Trump presidency is he likes to look good. He will probably negotiate with the Fed to lower interest rates. If the money flows too freely, then we're going to get back in. Like we're going to head towards the big bubble blow up even sooner. That's so my one fear.
In economics.
Well, but I mean, when it comes to what's going to happen in tech, what's going to happen in tech is directly affected by interest rates.
I agree.
There is a 1-to-1 correlation between the tech industry and the interest rates. So if the interest rates go down, then people are going to invest in meaningless things without thinking of the consequences, and where that's ultimately gonna do is push us over our ability to pay our debts, and that's going to cause a collapse. So I hope that the interest rates don't change very much, because if they do, I don't know how we're going to overcome the result. And it will be in large part due to AI in the tech sector, because it will be people like Sam Altman saying, oh, I just need another $300 billion of investment. I don't want him to get that $300 billion of investment, because that is significant in terms of our trillions of dollars of debt and the trillions of dollars that we have to pay on our debts. So I think my goal is not to get political. It is a practical 1-to-1 relationship.
Yeah. I think there's another part of the curve, and that's growth. And so, I think to a certain extent we can grow and lower interest rates, but I don't know where the lines cross. And I think that's the game that we're going to wind up playing, is how much economic growth are we going to get out of, deregulation or other things that the Trump administration is saying it wants to do. And then, how much of that we can absorb if we lower interest rates or other things. And I don't have the answers to that. I'm not an expert in that area, but I will say that I think there are a lot of things in play, and it'll be interesting to see how they all kind of pan out.
Yeah, as long as they don't go too low, this trend of profitability should continue. That's another thing. Like on tech Twitter, you see, what do they call it? The indie hackers or something, or indie something indie. Anyway, I know that a lot of it's just bogus. What?
Yeah, Indie Hackers is a real organization and podcast.
Yeah. Okay, there's something, build in public. There's the build in public type of movement. And I know a lot of that is bogus. It's just people, click farming or whatever, but it seems like there's some honesty out there in terms of people wanting to build products that are profitable and with small teams and with, traditional bootstrapping, the stuff that builds the economy. And I really do. I don't have a prediction on it. I just hope it continues.
Well, I think we're going to see more of that, where it's small teams and, solving real problems and that kind of approach, especially if we see more regulation lift. The thing that's interesting, though, is that and this is back to some of the other things we already talked about, where the tools get better, the technologies become more powerful, the capabilities that we have become better. And as that becomes more and more of a thing, then you don't need as much of the large team, large organization approach to a lot of these problems. Some of them, get solved, I guess, more easily is the best way I can put it, by having a lot of money and manpower behind it. But a lot of these problems are either small enough or approachable enough to where you can be competitive with a small organization. And I think we're going to see a bit more of that come out of the box. But again, a lot of that is dependent on what we're talking about here with the economy and regulation and the ability for people to either raise money or be able to do it off of the back of what they're already making in other ways. And so, anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that all kind of plays out. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to see kind of a renaissance of the small team, small approach to bigger problems, just because we have the capability of approaching those. All right, well, let's go real quick into where we're at and what we're working on. I'm going to try and keep everybody to like 2 minutes, because we're already at an hour and a half, and then we will wrap up. Dan, do you want to start?
Sure, why not? So I think we talked about it before. 2024 was a pretty shitty year in many regards. On a personal note, my mother-in-law, who we love dearly, passed away. And obviously, it's a year of war in Israel, which is really bad and having pretty sad impact on society. And we still have 100 hostages being held by Hamas, which is like a perpetual ache in your soul. And yeah, so there's that. On the positive side, on a personal note, I started working at a new place, SciSense, and I'm enjoying myself very much. We have a product which I like, which is basically the ability to do very easily do BI analysis and build dashboards and get alerts and take data from lots of sources and integrate them together and use AI and build and use components and build them into your own services and interfaces. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff. I'm a principal engineer there, and as I said, I'm enjoying myself very much. Also, despite the market, my two kids who are in tech were able to get jobs. So one is working as a game economist at a gaming company, and my daughter is working as a project manager at a gaming company. So gaming companies seem to be doing well. And other than that, this hopefully next year will be better. What can I say?
Yep.
I'm happy that the murderous Assad regime has fallen.
Yes.
One of the worst. Forget about. I don't know what's going to replace him, or if it's going to be better or worse or whatnot. I can only say that Assad was like the worst kind of dictator, and I'm hard pressed to think of any person more evil than he is. So I'm really glad that he's gone.
Yeah, hopefully it's not out of the frying pan and into the fire, though.
Yeah. I agree.
Yep.
But this guy is literally responsible for the death of 500,000 of his own people.
And he's still trying to justify everything he did from exile. So.
Yep.
It's the most despicable human being imaginable.
Yep. All right, Steve.
We just doing picks here?
No, we're where are you at? Where are you headed?
I'm still sitting at my desk, still working the same place. For me, I've really enjoyed playing around with and getting more and more into sort of my chosen stack, which is Laravel View Inertia, and just the really cool things I can do with data. I'm certainly not a CSS wizard that can make everything look pretty. I get by there, but give me manipulating data and making processes that help things move faster and better and more efficient is for me a lot of fun.
Wasn't AI created to help us with CSS?
If it is, I'm gonna have to start using it because Lord knows I need it. But
it's helped me with CSS.
Oh, I have to start trying that. Huh.
Yeah,
hey, give me
really
a nice layout, will you? But this one app that I've done for my local, for my gun club that I belong to has really saved us a lot of time and stuff. And I'm hoping to maybe be able to expand that to some other clubs around and stuff. From a personal standpoint, most of my good things have been coming from my kids. My daughter is in the second year of doing some teaching in Chiang Mai, Thailand, at an international school there, and I'm going to go see her in a week and a half. She was home for a few weeks over the summer, but my mom and I are going to see her after Christmas. So really looking forward to that. And she's got a significant other now. And the fun part about it is that he's the son of a guy that I grew up with. And it just totally coincidental that it worked out that way. So we're stoked about that. And then my son is been working on getting into the fire service full time. After it took me a while to talk him into it, but he's loving it. And so he's an intern at a local fire department here and be going to paramedic school starting in July. And so there will be no shortage of demand for his services once he gets that done. And he will probably be married within a couple of years as well. So that's a lot of fun stuff for us here on the family standpoint.
Great. I love hearing this stuff. AJ, where are you at? Where are you going?
Well, I'm still working independently. I have a few larger clients that carry the bulk of my time, and one of them is a digital currency organization, and one of them is a small business helping small businesses with investors organization. So but actually, I mean, it's given me a lot of insight into the economy. I feel much more versed and capable of understanding how some of this stuff happens with investment and, like I was saying, interest rates. And there's so much that I understand about the world being in the fields of cryptocurrency and growth stage business investment. And as far as where I'm going, there's a few things that I'm always wanting to work on, and we'll see. It's just, every time I think I've got some extra time, something happens, like I get sick for an entire week, or I have some sort of rush job that comes up that, but there is a project that I have with a few friends that is called BNNA, and that is something that we're just using for ourselves right now, but eventually we want to allow others to have low-cost, profitable cloud services. And the website for it is just a single page with an email address right now, bnna.net, and all the stuff that it's essentially containers, running containers rather than VMs, but not Docker containers, the technology that Docker is built on, Linux containers. So it's predominantly, we just run a bunch of Linux containers, and it's very, very nice, because if there's more, if I need more capacity for something, like say the database is getting more use, and so I want to add some more RAM and more CPUs, I can do it with a click of a button without actually having to reboot anything. Like in containers, when you add more resources, the resources just become available, as opposed to a VM where you have to reboot the VM in order to migrate it. So it's very much in line, like when I was watching the Rails World or talk by DHH, like a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, it's very much in line with the stuff we want to do. But that's a project that I'm working on slowly. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we actually allow customers to use it as well. It's built on Proxmox. We have a data center where we have servers set up, and we just bought hardware that other people were dumping out of their data centers. And, it actually, it's surprisingly cost effective to buy a 10-year-old server. When there's some of these sites, where they compare gaming computers and graphics cards and stuff like that. There's similar sites for comparing servers. And I recently did a rundown of cost comparisons on these servers that we have that are about 10 years old versus the latest servers. And it turns out that, like, you literally cannot beat the no matter which metric you're looking at, you can't beat what we've bought in terms of value. Like if you want to look at it RAM, you want to look at it CPU power, you want to look at it even performance per watt, which is where a lot of the gains are in the server stuff. Running older hardware is just better along every metric, especially right now, because there's kind of this, with all this AI boom, there's a lot of people wanting to buy the latest generation hardware, and that just drives up the prices much higher than it's worth, like in a way that it can't really be profitable. But it's really easy to be profitable with the older generation hardware. I mean, you can run thousands of containers on a few hyper-converged servers and get essentially 100% uptime. Anyway, so that's a project that I'm excited about. Also, I've mentioned Webby a bunch. webinstall.dev. It just passed 2,000 stars on GitHub. So we're continuing to work on that and make little improvements here and there. And it's just really cool to have something that, we started, I think 4 years ago. Maybe it was a little more than that. Maybe it was a little less, but in that range. And it's just like, it was a really, really slow ramp up. And then finally it was at the end of last year / the beginning of this year, we hit 1,000 stars. And then in just 1 year, we've doubled it. And I actually took away some of the, hey, give us a star stuff that's become less of a focus. There's still, when you install the tool and stuff, it'll print out in the console, like, if you love it, give us a star, whatever. But it's really, really cool to have a project that I think is, well, we'll see what happens, because there's now similar projects that are popping up. So what Webby is, you just install stuff and just install the thing. It's install scripts that are hosted. So you curl pipe shell install stuff like Node, for example. And to put it in contrast with a package manager, like if you've got apt or something, it goes and fetches a whole database and repository of things before it can install the one thing you need. And in the case of apt, it's always 10 years behind. And then in the case of brew, it's always got to do these updates, and then you get system conflicts and stuff. So in contrast to that, it's like all stuff that is pretty much zero dependency, like Node. The only dependency Node has, I think, is libSSL on most systems. And on some systems, it doesn't even have that. So it just works standalone. Anyway, so it's this installer tool, and that's been just growing and going well. And it's been really cool to finally feel like I've arrived on a project that's gained a lot of popularity in the developer community. And I don't know, it's one of my babies, and I love it. You said 2 minutes. I've already done 10. Sorry. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, I think
We're
you're
used to
5 minutes. But yeah, it's cool stuff that you're working on. So for sure. I'm going to jump in with my stuff. So I think I mentioned either before we started or after we started that 2024 has been a rough year. My brother attempted suicide about this time last year. And so we were dealing with that going into the year. I also I had a long-term contract that ended in February, and then I basically was employed or had a contract from like March into June, and then June into July, and then September, October, and now I have a contract that is part-time and not paying nearly the rates that I was getting before, that I've been working for the last about month. So on the employment end, it's been a little bit rocky here. And yeah, anyway, the whole year has just been insane. My wife got a new job in June, and that kind of sucks up all of her time. It's more than full time, kind of the way that's gone. But the nice thing is that we've been able to, pay most of the bills and, have health insurance and stuff like that through her work. So, that's where things are sitting. Where we're going here for the next little while, a lot of it has to do with the podcasts. As I mentioned, I'm putting together AI for Ruby and AI for JavaScript podcasts. I have both of those domains. They're both the .coms. So once those come out, I'll probably release the first few episodes on Ruby Rogues and JavaScript Jabber feeds. And then if you want those shows, you'll just go over to the other feeds. I've also been working on the Top End Devs platform and putting that together so I can offer courses and things like that, like the AI Dev Bootcamp. And I decided that since I just turned 45, if you want a 45% discount, go to aidevbootcamp.com. You can set up a call with me. Mostly it's because I have the curriculum laid out, but I want to talk to people and make sure that I understand where you're coming from, what problems you want to solve, what things you're looking at, so that, if there's something that you're in particular interested in, that I can make sure that I'm covering that and that I understand what you want. I think I've got it figured out, but I can verify that by talking to people. So AIDevBootcamp.com, there's going to be a video and a scheduling link on there. And like I said, if you sign up for a call here within the next week, as we're recording this, right? So when this comes out, just let me know that you had just heard the episode, and I'll still give you the discount. But anyway, that's kind of the big thing I'm working on. And then I have been working on pulling together the communities for JavaScript, JavaScript geniuses and Ruby geniuses. So those are the other two big things I'm working on. I want to do a weekly call where we kind of chat like this. We'll have a topic, maybe have somebody do a little bit of teaching and demo, and then we'll chat, right? Because I want it to be a community where you get the benefits of having a community, kind of like when I had coming up when I was going to users groups and stuff. I've seen a lot of those have just not come back, and I want to give people that option. And then it'll also include weekly videos where I teach you some thing in JavaScript and, just dive into how to build great apps and do awesome stuff with JavaScript. So, anyway, that's essentially my 3 minutes. I took a little longer too, but, that's the big thing that I'm working on. You can go sign up for any and all of it at JavaScriptJabber.com or topendos.com. So let's go ahead and slide into our picks, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, this has been a little bit longer episode, but I don't hear any complaints. Dan, we've kind of had you going first every time, so you want to go first with picks?
Sure, why not? So I've got two picks. The first is a TV show that we're watching, I think on Netflix. It's with Ted Danson. It's called A Man on the Inside. It's not amazing. It's not very deep, but it's very enjoyable, and it's kind of, heartwarming. It's about this retired man, widower, who, in order to, his daughter tells him to get a hobby. So the hobby he gets is to be this kind of spy in assisted living facility, in order to try to find who stole some stuff there. And it's really enjoyable. It's amusing, it's heartwarming, it's enjoyable, and we're liking it so far. Like I said, not very deep, but enjoyable. And my other pick is a podcast called Trigonometry. It's a mostly political podcast. It's with British comedians Konstantin Kissin and Francis Foster. The latest episode that I've not finished watching is actually excellent. If you're into podcasts and you want to understand what's going on in Syria, because it's really complicated, then I really, really recommend this latest podcast episode from yesterday. They interview Thomas Small, who I don't know. I've never heard of him before, but he describes what's going on there in detail, and I know something about it. And so far, everything is said has been pretty much on the money. So if you want to learn more about what's going on there and want to understand what might happen, I highly recommend that episode. And those would be my picks.
Awesome. Steve, what are your picks?
All right. I know it's been a few weeks, so I've been getting emails like constantly saying, we need you back for your dad jokes. So, right. Anyway, so here's my dad jokes of the week. This one is so great for this kind of year. At least if you live in the US, you'll get it. My wife took her car into a mechanic the other day, and she says, man, it's making this horrible noise. And he said, have you tried turning off that Mariah Carey Christmas song? For those of you not in the U.S., there's a singer, Mariah Carey, had a song, All I Want for Christmas Is You. It came out, 20, 30 years ago, and it still gets played ad nauseum at Christmas. So.
You reminded me of, this thing called mean tweets, where celebrities So I think
they read their own, the ones that are directed.
Yeah. So I think it was Selena Gomez who had a song come out at that time, and the tweet was that Selena Gomez song is on the radio again. Is there a volume lower than mute?
So let's see. Sorry, I lost my page here a little bit, and I got sunlight glaring at me. Oh, let's see. Dang it! Just when you hit expand. So the meteorologist who devised the wind chill factor, that we all say it's this degrees, but it feels like this. He died. He was 86, but he felt like he was 75. Right.
Okay.
And finally, what do you call a javelin thrower with Parkinson's disease? Shakespeare. Those are the dad jokes of the week.
They don't carry the same punch now that I follow you more on Twitter and I get to see them in advance. I wish I could be. I need to unfollow you so that I can have the full experience the first time while we're here on the show.
All right, AJ, what are your picks?
Okay, so first one is there's this new thing, or maybe it's actually probably not a new thing. It's just something I heard about recently called rejection therapy. And unsolicited life advice for men. Rejection is the water that you swim in. Rejection encompasses you. It surrounds you. It is the pressure that is constantly pushing on every fiber of your being and buoys you up. Rejection is the water you swim in.
Oh, so you ain't telling a lie there. Let me tell you.
People got to understand it. Like, I think because we used to have brothers, we used to have friends, we used to have dares, and this generation of men that's growing up, they unfortunately, because of choices of their parents, of situations, whatever, like people don't live in communities where they have that healthy toxic masculinity of men razzing one another and doing the dares and doing the trash talk and stuff, but you need it because you like, that is real life. Like, you have to face rejection. Anyway, rejection therapy. There's this guy who's got a YouTube channel where he does stuff in order to experience rejection and become comfortable with it. And I think it's so important. And I thought it was a really cool take. So basically, does things that he knows won't happen. Or I think he's got a list of 100 items, and I think the first ones are ones that are pretty much impossible. But then some of them you might get lucky and it might work out. And it's stuff like, ask the cashier if you can scoop your own fries. Or, just like, some of it's just ridiculous stuff, like what you would normally in a typical teenagerhood of yesteryear, you would just stupid stuff you would have done with your buddies anyway, but just ridiculous asks to become comfortable with doing something that pretty much guarantees rejection so that you can feel okay with rejection. And so I've got a link to his blog and his YouTube channel. And then along that vein, John Sonmez, who was previously Simple Programmer, on the channel that he was developing at a similar time, he has a video that's very similar to this called Eye Contact and Smirking. And it's a similar thing. It's about go around and do things that are uncomfortable, like just walk down the street or walk through a mall or walk through some crowded area and just maintain eye contact and don't look away, don't blink, don't smile, just maintain eye contact and keep walking. And it's one of those things because it makes you feel uncomfortable inside, but then as you do it, you actually become more confident, because confidence is simply not having a fear of rejection, more or less. And if you do these things anyway, so I just think it's absolutely wonderful. I think that men today, especially if you want to be valuable in the dating pool, you've got to accept that rejection is your world. And when you accept that and you become comfortable and confident in the world of rejection, then the world's your oyster. And then also John Sonmez, another video that I don't remember exactly what it was, but I had it in the same bookmark place where I had this other one, was called how to become a man, and it's about stoicism and stuff. So that's all kind of one pick is rejection therapy, and I guess in general stoicism. I cannot recommend it enough. Something similar to this is what changed my world, and I went from not being able to get dates to being able to get dates with anybody that I wanted to get dates with. Now, actually extending that to relationship is a completely different story, because it's the door salesman game is completely different than the life partner game, but you gotta do the one to get to the other at some point. Anyway, the other pick I have is there's an AI model leaderboard. So if you want to stay up to date with, well, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of be exhausting to be downloading new models all the time, but if you want to keep an eye on which models are performing the best, which, of course, OpenAI's models are always playing leapfrog with the other models. And so you're probably 75% of the time, the OpenAI models are on the top, but they're not that much further ahead. I mean, we're down to a matter of like 1 to 2 percentage points. So most of the other models, or not most of the other models, most of the other groups that are producing models, that have been producing models for a long time, their models, leapfrog and get up there within a couple of percentage points. And a lot of them are open source. And so like OpenAI was supposed to be. So if you want to keep on track, top of the AI stuff, it's evalplus.github.io/leaderboard.html. That link will be in the notes. And then Ollama/search. So once you go check out the model on the leaderboard, then you can check it out on Ollama, and then you can see, you can run it for yourself, play with it, see if it's fast enough, if you like it. And then of course, if you want to install Ollama easy and quickly, webinstall.dev/Ollama, and you can do that. And I mostly use ChatGPT just because it's convenient. But I do run models locally, and a lot of them are just as good or slightly better depending on the topic. I mean, particularly downloading a model that's tuned for coding, you can get them that are a little bit better or at least just as good. And so playing with different models, I've enjoyed that experience, and being able to run it on my own hardware. Now, granted, you do have to have like 32 gigs of RAM for a lot of these models, or at least 16. That's available. But anyway, so those are my picks: rejection therapy and places to check out the top AI models and experiment with them.
One of the things I'd like to do, AJ, to practice that, along the lines of the looking in people's eyes, is when I get in elevators or I turn around and face inward from the front. Makes people all kind of nervous.
Do you really do that though?
I have done it before. Yeah, I don't do it every time, but yeah.
God bless you.
There's a famous sociological experiment where they had people walking to elevators, and people inside were standing facing like weird directions, and people basically aligned themselves with the group.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I had this crazy uncle. He used to he'd take all of us and make us stand still and quiet for 2 minutes and not say a word. He called it elevator practice.
All right. I am going to throw in my picks. So the first one's a board game. It's called Heat. It is a game. It's a racing board game. So you all have your cars. You can play up to like 8 players, I think, with the expansion. Without the expansion, it's up to 6 players. And what you wind up doing is you play with a deck of cards that are in your hand, and you're essentially trying to get around the track the fastest, right? Whoever gets, we play 2 laps. And so after 2 laps, whoever's the furthest past the finish line wins. Now it has curves on the track. And so if you go around the track too fast on that curve, then you take heat in your engine, and the heat cards are basically, they just take up space in your hand. If you run out of heat, then you spin out and you go back to the curve that you blew past, right? And so then you've got to get around the curve without taking any more heat. And then there are ways to get rid of heat and all that stuff. It was a really, really fun game. We played it in I think when there were 6 of us, we played it in like a half hour, or sorry, in an hour. When there were 4 of us, I think it took us like 45 minutes. So really not that bad. Board Game Geek weights it at 2.19. So casual is the top end of your casual player, what you're willing to attack. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. There are multiple boards or multiple tracks, I guess, that you can play on. And so, yeah, it's really just that management of your deck. I think some of the expansions give you like power ups, but the main deck you don't. You just play your deck and then try and manage your speed and your heat. And that's really it, right? It's okay. How fast can I take this turn, and then how quickly can I bleed the heat off before I have to take the next turn or the next curve? And so, if the curve is a 5 and you go 10, you take 5 heat. You only have 7 heat in your deck. And so if you don't have the 5 heat, then you spin out. And so that's the game you're playing with that. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but we really had a good time, and it's really not that complicated a game to pick up. The steps are on your playing card or your play mat. And so you just literally just go down the thing. And the only thing you do simultaneously is you put the cards face down that you're going to do, and then you can flip them over. You flip them all over at the same time, and then you just play them in order, first place to last place. And there are some catch-up mechanisms and stuff. So, if you get way behind, you can definitely do that. I'm going to pick a couple of books as well. I really have enjoyed these. I'm almost done with the second one. The first one is Hit Refresh by Satya Nadella. Satya is the CEO of Microsoft. And anyway, he kind of, now the book's not current, right? So it doesn't have the last few years of history from Microsoft, but he talks about when he took his history and then how he took over at Microsoft and how they kind of changed direction and solved some of the issues that were there inside the company. And anyway, it was really, really good. I really, really can't recommend this book highly enough. It was fun that it was in tech, and it was fun that it was, somebody that I'd actually seen speak, because I've gone to Microsoft conferences in the past. And anyway, Hit Refresh, terrific book. He reads parts of the book on the audiobook. That's how I consumed it. He reads parts of it himself, but there's a narrator for the rest. It's basically the parts he does the forward, and I think he does the afterward, and then there's like 1 or 2 parts where he talks about his disabled son, and that's kind of personal, and so he reads that part himself as well. But it was really, really good, and I found it inspiring just because I think a lot of times we get the idea that just because things worked out and whatever, that these people somehow have this like blessed life and no challenges and stuff like that. And it turns out that he went through some stuff too, some personal stuff, and there were some real challenges in the way that they had to approach things. The other book is American Icon by Bryce Hoffman. And he talks about the turnaround at Ford. And so he kind of gets into some of the history of the Ford Motor Company and what led up to them hiring Alan Mulally as their CEO, and then all of the things that they went through to basically revitalize and rescue Ford up through the Great Recession and all that stuff. And it's been really fascinating to listen to as well. I think I've got like an hour left on that book. It is so good. And then I have another fiction book series that I want to pick, and I don't remember if I picked this before, but they're worth picking again anyway. It's the Sword of Truth books. And those are by Terry Goodkind. I read them when I was in high school. And the ones that were out when I was in high school. The first one's called Wizard's First Rule, and I'll put a link to that here as well. It's in the chat in the...
Yeah, I like those books. It's one of the best most thought out magical systems I've ever seen in a fantasy book series.
Yeah, it's so good. I've really, really enjoyed them. I'm on book 6 or 7.
Actually, I confused it with another book series. Sorry. You're saying Wizard's First Rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I read that as well, but I was thinking of a different one. Never mind.
I'm curious what you confused it with, but yeah.
While you speak, I'll do a quick search because I don't want to get the name wrong again.
Fair enough. The last pick I have is, so I am talking to you. I mentioned this earlier, and I kind of wanted to put this up as a potential trend, but I don't know. I don't know if it will or won't come to pass. So, anyway, I switched to Linux off of Mac OS, and part of the deal was, so I've been running on kudos to Mac. I was running on a Mac laptop for the last 5 or 6 years. And I mean, the thing did everything I needed to up until recently. I had a couple of clients that had their applications running essentially on a Docker Compose. And so once I fired up the Docker agent which is Docker Desktop on the Mac, my machine would just grind to a halt. It was super slow. And so I was looking at things and thinking, this is not working for me. And I need another machine. So I looked into getting a new Mac, and I could get another Mac laptop. But again, the resources on the laptops were not where I wanted them. I've been diving into AI a bunch, and that kind of taxes the resources sometimes. And so I wanted something that had a whole lot more horsepower. And so then I looked at a Mac Pro, and the Mac Pro with all the things that I wanted in it was like $11,000. And I thought, okay, well, at the time I was on a contract that I expected to last that didn't. And so I thought I could afford it. And so I almost pulled the trigger on that. And then I just decided not to. But at the same time, I was trying to get this work done, and it would just go kind of slow. And so I was poking around the internet looking for something else. And I found a company called System 76. And System 76 is, they sell desktop machines. And since I generally work here at my desk, I figured that would be a great option, kind of like the Mac Pro. And so I can't remember all the specs. I think it has 128 gigs of RAM. I've got 4 terabytes of hard drive space in there, so I'm well beyond what my laptop had. And it runs Ubuntu Linux. So there have been a few things that I've kind of had to figure out. Hey, I like this on the Mac. How do I do it on Linux? But so far, I haven't really been disappointed with what I can do on the Mac or on the Linux machine. I have not tried to hook up my ATEM Mini yet, which is how I do my green screen. So I might have to run some of that off of the Mac, but it does that fine. But I mean, other than that, and if I have to do Photoshop or something, I'll just open up the Mac. It's not a big deal. But the rest of it, I am delighted with the way that it runs. It's fast. It does everything I need. All the Docker stuff, it just does it because it's not running it in a VM, which was what was killing my performance on my Mac. And so, at the end of the day, System 76 is where I got it. I love recommending good stuff. I wish they had an affiliate program because then I'd get paid to recommend good stuff, but go check them out because they're awesome. For laptops, if you're looking for laptops in the same vein, the one that I keep hearing about is the Framework laptop. I haven't bought one, but that's where I'm looking next. And they sell Linux laptops, but they're modular. And so if you want to upgrade a part of it, you can actually just buy that part from Framework and swap it in your machine. So you can upgrade the RAM, you can upgrade the screen, you can upgrade whatever you want off of it. And you literally just pull the part off and put the other part on. And so that appeals to me from the standpoint of, then I can have the laptop I want. And if I can't quite buy the laptop with all the bells and whistles I want, I can eventually just upgrade the pieces one bit at a time. So anyway, Yeah,
Chuck,
I was a
you
little worried
asked me.
about what Linux would do, but I have, like I said, it's been able to do pretty much everything I need.
Sorry, I interrupted. Before we finish, you asked me about the book. The book I was referring to is called Master of the Five Magics by Lyndon Hardy. If you're not familiar with it,
I have
it's
never
actually
heard of it.
it's from the 80s. It has one of the best magic systems. It's actually it became a series, but it can be read as a standalone book. And it's got one of the best, most thought out magic systems I've seen in a fantasy book.
Huh. I'm gonna have to add that to my wish list.
I'll send you.
I'm always looking for great.
I'll add that to my picks. I'll send you. I'll put in the link.
Awesome. All right. Well, I am done with my picks. Just a reminder, go to aidevbootcamp.com if you want to get in on the boot camp. I'm looking at starting at like the 15th-ish of January. So anyway, if that's everything, we'll just wrap it up. Till next time, folks. Max out.
Bye.
Adios.